In my previous life, when I divorced my ex-husband, my daughter insisted on staying with him and her stepmom. Later, a heatwave hit, and I unexpectedly won $5 million, spending my time safely in a shelter while my daughter suffered at her dad's. My heart softened, and I risked my life to bring her supplies, but she stabbed me in the chest. She said in hatred, "Why didn't you take me with you? Why did you abandon me and make me suffer so much? You deserve to die." After my death, my ex and his family took over my safe house and left my body to bake under the scorching sun. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the time right after the divorce. This time my daughter clutched my hand, crying, "Mom, I want to come with you." This little traitor, she's also been reincarnated. On the day of the divorce, my ex-husband, Henry, brazenly brought his mistress to fight for custody. At that moment, my daughter Sunny stood next to his mistress, seeming to choose to go with Henry. But then she froze. Sunny blinked, trying to make sense of what was happening. Henry was getting impatient. "Go on and tell your mom you're coming with me. Why are you just standing there?" She finally snapped back to reality, hurried over to me and cried, "Mom, I want to go with you." Henry was dumbfounded, quickly pulling her aside, saying, "Didn't you say you wanted to come with me? Why did you change your mind now?" Sunny shot him a glare and said, "I don't care. I'm going with Mom. She's cared for me all these years. Who do you think you are?" Henry's temper flared. "You little traitor, you really changed your mind now?" Looking at Sunny's face, chills ran down my spine, remembering the last life when she cruelly killed me. Then it hit me. Not only had I come back to life, but Sunny had too. I let out a sarcastic laugh, pulling her away from Henry, smiling through gritted teeth. "I always knew our Sunny was the sweetest. Mom didn't waste her efforts raising you." Sunny smirked, feeling proud. Henry left with his mistress after cursing at Sunny. Sunny watched them go, muttering under her breath, "Shameless fools." She probably didn't realize I had been reincarnated too. In my past life, Sunny wasn't like this at all. I was strict with her, hoping she'd succeed, and gave her the best material conditions possible. But she resented my ways and preferred Henry's hands-off parenting. When I caught on to Henry's affair and planned to catch him in the act, Sunny tipped him off, ruining my plans. In the end, she sided with Henry and Wendy. She blatantly declared, "I like Dad and Wendy more. I want Wendy to be my mom, not you." I was furious, but she was my daughter, raised with so much care, so I couldn't bring myself to abandon her, even trying my best during the divorce. Sunny, influenced by them, insisted on staying with Henry. Little did we know that less than 2 months later, a heatwave apocalypse struck. I was lucky to win a $5 million lottery, managing to turn my home into a safe house, surviving the apocalypse. Sunny wasn't as fortunate. Henry wasn't prepared at all, and what little they had went to Wendy, his pregnant mistress. Sunny was eventually sent to a creepy old guy for food, living a life worse than an animal's. She regretted it deeply, calling me in tears, begging for help. I softened, risking myself to bring her supplies, only to be greeted by a stab at my heart upon opening the door. Collapsing under Sunny's twisted face, she spat, "Why didn't you take me with you? You deserve this for abandoning me. After I died, they took everything I had, including my safe house. God must be watching because I got a second chance. But it wasn't just me who got resurrected." Sunny now looked at me with such innocence, apologizing while sobbing, "Mom, everything that happened before was all my fault. I was wrong. You're the only one truly good to me." I scoffed internally, thinking she can't expect me to forgive her for her past life's sins with just a few apologies. I wasn't planning to forgive her. I decided to play it cool and hide that I'd also come back to life, waiting for the right moment to get back at her. So, I went about my day, getting ready for work as usual. But Sunny stopped me with a serious look on her face. "Mom, I've got something important to tell you." I listened as Sunny animatedly described an upcoming heatwave apocalypse in 2 months, urging me to gather supplies and, most importantly, to buy a lottery ticket in 2 weeks. Pretending to be skeptical, I asked, "Is all this true?" Sunny got anxious. "Of course, Mom. I'm reincarnated, even if it's hard to believe. But this is for our good. Plus, we need to leave this house, move into the mountains preferably." She wasn't as dumb as before, driven by survival instincts. I thought about it and said, if we really win the lottery, I'll believe you. Sunny nodded eagerly. I'm no fool. I know the sooner we prepare, the better. Within those 2 weeks, I quietly started house hunting, especially mountain villas. During a heatwave apocalypse, though forest life would die, shadows in the mountains could block sunlight, making it cooler and less likely we'd be found. In my past life, I'd only stockpiled in my current house, but it ended up being too small with too few resources. After searching for a while, I finally found a suitable villa in the shadow of a mountain and sold the city house just in time for a perfect fit. Each floor of the house is about 300 square meters, with a total of 3 floors and a large basement. It's more than enough space for one person to store their supplies. But I didn't expect to run into Sunny while checking out the villa. When she saw me there, she was surprised. Mom, what are you doing here? I never really believed in the Doomsday thing. And if I didn't come up with a good reason today, she might get suspicious. Thinking on my feet, I quickly replied, you forgot to turn off your phone's location. I saw you out here in the mountains and got worried, so I followed you. Sunny breathed a sigh of relief and pointed at the villa excitedly. Mom, I think this place is pretty good. I smiled and agreed. If what you're saying is true, we'll move here. We played the role of a loving mother and daughter on the way home, happy as can be. Afterward, I started prepping for the inevitable heat apocalypse's most critical necessity, air conditioning. When it really hits, the sun won't set, and surface temperatures will soar to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. Air conditioners can't be turned off. Luckily, solar power can handle the electricity issues. We just need the best air conditioners. I spent a fortune getting 10 high-quality units, scheduled for delivery a month later. To avoid suspicion, I told the sellers we owned a factory. Then there were fridges to keep food from spoiling too fast, thanks to the air conditioning. I bought 4 double-door refrigerators, plenty for now. As for the food, I planned to stock up in a month. When it was time for the lottery, Sunny woke me up bright and early. I remembered the numbers and, just like in my past life, hit a $500,000 jackpot. Sunny looked at the winning ticket, eyes filled with greed. Great, this is so great. I knew she was excited about surviving the apocalypse. Back home, I pretended to say, now Mom believes you. Sunny was relieved, smiling wide like a flower, ignoring my indifferent eyes. I started selling houses, and somehow Henry found out. He called, mocking me. Molly, looks like you're having a rough time lately. I guess you're too ashamed to stay here after the divorce. Huh? I snapped back. Take your girlfriend far away from me. Henry got even angrier, but was at a loss for words. I knew he wanted money. During the divorce, he was the cheater and cared about his image. So to avoid gossip, Henry himself said the house was mine, and we'd split the savings. But neither Wendy nor Henry had real jobs, and they spent money wildly. When the extreme heat truly hits, they'll reap what they sow. I thought about blocking Henry entirely, but seeing Sunny's smug look, I just smiled and hung up. Selling the house went smoothly, and I quickly bought the villa in the mountains. I quit my job and started stocking up on supplies. It was midsummer, with no temps over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. People just occasionally complained about the heat, with no one suspecting an extreme heat wave might hit. Moving to the villa began with beefing up defense measures. I called a locksmith for the highest grade security doors and added a layer of steel for extra safety. Even the perimeter wall got an electric fence. Seeing the installer's curious looks, I quickly said, it's just my daughter and me living here in the mountains. We're afraid of wild bears, you know? Scary stuff. He laughed but said nothing more. To keep the heat out, I installed bulletproof glass and blackout curtains on every window. When the apocalypse hit, I'd seal all the windows to block the heat and keep out bad guys. With everyone cranking up their ACs during heat waves, the power grid of the future will collapse. Luckily, solar energy is abundant, so I installed a solar power system to sort the energy problem. Next, the most important thing, water. With all rivers drying up and no rain for years, people will fight tooth and nail over a drop. Storing water became the biggest challenge. I busted open the concrete floor of the basement to build 2 large, deep water tanks to ensure water flow. Then I stored 200 barrels of pure water, delivering them in batches to the villa, filling the first floor and basement with the stuff. But that wasn't enough. I bought water purifiers to ensure even dirty water could be cleaned and reused. After all this prep, a whole month went by since my rebirth, with just 1 month left before the heat apocalypse. I was crazy busy, while Sunny leisurely played video games in the villa all day. She was always selfish, used to my unconditional care, and too lazy to help stock supplies. Little did she know, none of the stuff in this house would be hers. Then, the fridges and ACs I ordered arrived. After setting them up one by one, I got down to hoarding food. Starting with the essentials, I bought over 30 bags of rice, lots of sweet potatoes, and other storable grains. Seeing the food arrive, Sunny finally dragged her royal self off the bed. She counted the grains, furrowing her brows. This doesn't seem like enough. Of course not, because none of these supplies were for her. I thought this but explained, we also need mini instant meals and convenience foods. These grains take up too much space. Sunny nodded without suspicion and went back upstairs to her games. I continued tirelessly hoarding supplies. There are loads of convenience foods these days, like pre-made Xinjiang fried rice noodles and pasta. I've stocked up over 500 boxes, enough to last me at least 6 months. Fresh fruit is a must. I got some seeds for common veggies and set up a little garden on the second floor. I'm growing some tomatoes and cucumbers there. As for meat, I went straight to the slaughterhouse and got 600 pounds of pork and beef. Filled up a double-door fridge to the brim. For veggies, fruits, and stuff like eggs and milk, I stocked up 3 more fridges. Worried the meat might spoil, and raising livestock isn't exactly feasible, I tweaked our basement water tanks into a tiny fish pond. I got 50 fish fry. Thinking I needed some live animals, I did some research online. Seems like Coturnix quail are a great choice. Easy to care for, small, and amazing egg layers. So, I bought a cage and got 20 of them. And then there's the all-important sugar and salt. In extreme heat, many people face life-threatening dehydration. Salt and sugar can be lifesavers. So I bought 100 pounds of each just in case. Also grabbed some cooling patches and herbal cooling water. Prepared the home medicine stash to handle any surprise. Stocked up 100 ice pops to beat the heat. By the time I finished getting everything ready, there was less than a week until the apocalyptic heatwave hit. And today, the city's temperature already topped 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Scrolling through social media, everyone's complaining about the heat. Some are even wishing for rain to cool things down a bit. Little do they know, it'll never rain again. The temperature keeps climbing, almost a degree each day. By the time it nears 113 degrees Fahrenheit, people finally realize how serious this is. The weather forecast hotline is bombarded, and emergency meetings at the meteorological office happen daily. No one knows what's next for Earth. But it's clear that although summer has passed, days are getting longer and nights shorter. Something is off with the sun's movement. I look at the news on my phone and let out a sigh. In my last life, during the 3rd month of the apocalypse, night disappeared altogether. Only endless days were left. Some couldn't handle losing their perception of time, and even had thoughts of ending it all. To prepare, I got several clocks. 2 days later, the apocalypse really hit. In one night, temperatures soared to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Sun protection clothing and air conditioners sold out. Food prices hit the roof. A single bottle of water shot up to $100. Sunny lounged on the couch, eating ice cream and enjoying the AC, looking smug as she checked her phone. She glanced at the mountain of bottled water and joked, "If it weren't for survival, I'd sell these for a fortune." I was tending to the small garden, which was sprouting shoots, when a call broke the quiet. It was Henry. For the first time, I heard him sounding so humble. "Molly, I seriously can't go on. Wendy's pregnant. You can't just leave us hanging." Before I could respond, Sunny dashed over and tossed my phone to the ground, her face flushed with anger, yelling, "Stay away from my mom, you disgraceful leech." She's like that, holding a grudge against Henry for what he did in a past life, yet pretending her actions now are noble by blaming it all on me. Henry didn't expect Sunny to lash out like that. Furious, his voice changed. Who begged for my attention before the divorce, huh? Acting like a lunatic now. You're the shameless one. And with that, he hung up. Sunny was fuming, but said nothing. She didn't dare reveal to Henry that she knew about the apocalyptic heatwave ahead. Worried he'd realize she'd been reborn. If he found out she kept this a secret, he'd never let her off, even if it cost him his life. I decided to stir the pot. Why the sudden switch to being on my side? Didn't you prefer Henry? Sunny stuttered, then changed the topic. Mom, can I have cold noodles for dinner? I chuckled but stayed silent. On the 10th day of the heat wave, the temperature hit an astounding 176 degrees Fahrenheit. Most plants in the mountains were dead, rivers began to dry up, and the world seemed like a blazing fireball intent on scorching everything to death. Thankfully, the solar power system held steady, keeping the 5 air conditioners running non-stop, and the indoor temperature around 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Likely due to shifts in the Earth's magnetic field, phone signals are now unstable. I worry I'll lose contact with Henry, letting Sunny get away scot-free, and missing the unfolding drama. So, I plan to secretly activate location tracking on Sunny's phone. That night, while she slept, I snuck her phone, using her fingerprint to unlock it. I turned on the location feature and stumbled upon her notes. Sunny wrote only a single line. If supplies truly run out, mall's as good as dead, and no one's stopping me from surviving in this apocalypse. I smirked, watching Sunny sleep, then shut her phone and placed it back. Suddenly, a light flashed from outside, jolting me. If anyone is out in this intense heat, they're either part of a suicide squad or desperate souls pushed to the brink searching for supplies. This house might be hidden, but with all those AC units, you can hear them if you listen carefully. Well, thank goodness I already installed an electric fence on the yard's wall. If they try to force their way in, they'll be toast. I quickly woke up Sunny and headed downstairs to see what was going on. The computer monitor is on the 2nd floor. There, we saw 2 sneaky figures on the screen, trying to find a way in. Sunny watched them, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. I glanced at my phone. The outside temperature was 85 degrees. If they weren't prepared, they might not last 10 minutes. But if they were well prepared and armed, we'd be screwed. Back when the heat wave hit, the government did distribute some thermal suits, but I didn't get any. Now looking at their bulky forms on the monitor, it seems they might be wearing those suits. I told Sunny to stay by the computer, while I went to the window near the front door on the 1st floor, and quietly peeked through the curtain. The silhouettes looked like they belonged to tall men in protective gear. One of them had a backpack and seemed exhausted, sitting on the ground not moving. One man spoke up first. I know someone's in there. All we need are 3 bottles of water. My friend's not gonna make it. Please, helping someone is a virtue. Please. He even knelt toward our house in desperation. Normally, if someone asked me for water, I'd give it to them. But now, in this apocalyptic world, who knows how twisted people can be? If they have weapons, even the slightest sympathy could get me killed. And no one would be there to pick up the pieces. I quietly closed the curtain and slipped back to the 2nd floor. But then Sunny, by the computer, silently shed tears. She looked at me sobbing, "Mom, they're so pitiful. It's just a few bottles of water. We have so many resources. What's the harm in helping?" I clenched my fists, reminded of something Sunny wrote in her phone notes. Seems like she's not waiting for the day we run out of resources. She wants me gone now. Bang, bang, bang. We heard loud banging from outside. On the monitor, the 2 got frustrated by our lack of response and started attacking the yard gate with an axe. I knew they were trouble, but I wasn't scared that they'd break in. They might get through the yard gate, but they won't get past the 2 solid security doors I installed. Even with firepower, they couldn't breach those. I wanted to play dead a little longer, but Sunny threw open the 2nd floor curtains, yelling, "We have water. I'll get my mom to bring it down to you." Her voice was loud, making sure they heard downstairs. I gave her a hard look. "If you're so soft-hearted, why not come down with me?" Sunny's mouth dropped open to refuse, but more shouting from outside interrupted her. "You better hand over the water." Sunny's eyes darted around as she continued crying, "Mom, they're scary. Just give them the water so we can be safe." Without another word, I yanked Sunny up and coldly said, "You wanted to save lives, right? If I go, the credit would be mine, wouldn't it? Might as well come with me." "Mom!" Sunny started to resist, but I grabbed her hair and dragged her down to the first floor amidst her piercing screams. The people at the door were all keyed up seeing us, like hunters spotting prey. I opened the first security door, and the heat blasted in, sweat trickling down instantly. Sunny hid behind me, in disbelief that I was actually helping strangers. I tossed them the key to the yard gate. "Come in." The key traced an arc in the air, landing perfectly in front of the two. They snatched it and opened the gate. Sunny screamed, "Mom, no! Don't let them in!" This wasn't what Sunny had expected, and now she was worried for her own life. The two stumbled over, eyes lighting up at the water at my feet. I picked up a bottle and said, "Come closer." They exchanged wary glances, still suspicious. I raised an eyebrow and scoffed, "Don't want it? This is a one-time offer." Then I glanced at Sunny, signaling her, "Go on, give them the water." One guy couldn't hold back anymore, grabbing the bottle from me and gulping it down. I handed the remaining one to the other man, who drank greedily, ignoring the woman barely holding on behind him. Sated but not satisfied, they shouted, "Give us more." I dropped my smile and said calmly, "I told you, just 3 bottles. One man yelled at Sunny, "Hurry and give me the water." Sunny swallowed nervously and cautiously handed it over. The man seized her wrist, shouting to the guy with the backpack, "This bottle's mine too." The backpack guy wasn't happy. "Says who?" He lunged for the door, trying to snatch the bottle from Sunny. In a flash, the electric fence zapped him, and he collapsed, twitching on the ground. The other guy was stunned, as was Sunny, standing there confused. Nobody knew that this door was also electrified. Everything I just did was just to provoke them into walking into a trap themselves. Watching his fellow fall, the man became angrier. He pulled out a knife and stabbed Sunny's hand. Sunny was so scared she screamed and blood gushed out. During the struggle, the man touched the door too, and soon there were 2 bodies lying at the entrance. Sunny was holding her bleeding hand, looking at me with hatred in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and said, "Molly, did you do this on purpose?" I shrugged innocently. "Didn't you say lives are at stake? What's a hand injury compared to that?" Once the crisis was over, Sunny, with a cold face, went back to bandage her wound. I dealt with the bodies at the door, afraid that more people would discover the supplies in this villa. Sunny and I had a silent treatment for 3 days. She was probably figuring out how to discreetly eliminate me and take all the villa's resources. But plans can't keep up with changes. I didn't expect that the first person to find the villa wasn't Henry, but Wendy. She was wearing a heavy insulated suit, but it couldn't hide her bulging belly. In the middle of the night, she lay on the ground in the yard, crying out repeatedly, "Sunny, it's Wendy. Didn't you always like me? I'm about to die now, please save me." Sunny's eyes widened in disbelief as she looked at the computer screen and yelled, "How did she get here? How could she know we're here?" Leaning against the window, I lazily said, "So what do you plan to do?" Sunny trembled with anger. "Who cares? If she dies, she dies. 2 lives mean what to me?" I teased. "You were willing to give a few bottles of water to strangers. Wendy treated you well too. How come you won't save her?" "Unless," I moved closer and whispered, "she didn't treat you well in a past life?" Sunny nodded fiercely, gritting her teeth with anger. "In our past life, she whispered bad things about me to my dad. Pushed me out the window so their child could survive. How could I not hate them?" Only then did I realize that after I died in the past life, Sunny didn't have a good time either, probably being cornered by Henry and Wendy. That's why in this life, she was so anxious to turn to me. She kept talking about how wrong she was in the past life, never mentioning how she killed me. I pretended not to know anything and angrily said, "How could they treat you like this? It's just unreasonable." Perhaps not expecting me to be so understanding, Sunny didn't know what to say. She awkwardly smiled and said, "I knew you were the best, Mom." I didn't speak, staring at the surveillance where Wendy was. Then I remembered Henry hadn't shown up. I guessed Henry was prepared. He probably sent Wendy first to see if we'd cave in. If not, he'd come at us hard. As I pondered what to do, Sunny, enraged, paced around and kept swearing, "I just don't get how he found out where we are. Mom, what do we do if Henry goes mad and breaks in?" I walked up to her and patted her shoulder, reassuringly, no worries, I'll go see what they're up to. She, confused by my intentions, watched me go downstairs. Hesitating for a bit, she followed me down. I opened the first door, seeing Wendy kneeling and begging humbly. I felt utterly satisfied. Even her insulated suit was in tatters, some skin already reddened. Wendy saw me, as if seeing a savior, pleaded tearfully, Molly, it was my fault in the past. Please don't hold it against me, save my life. I smiled and tossed her half a bottle of water. She quickly picked it up, unscrewed it wanting to drink. Suddenly, a dark figure rushed in, kicked Wendy to the ground fiercely. Gross, you think you can drink water first? You shameless woman. As soon as he spoke, I realized it was Henry. He wore the best insulated suit, treating pregnant Wendy as expendable. The half bottle of water rolled on the ground, spilling half. Henry quickly picked it up and guzzled it down. Watching their water dwindle, Wendy started wailing, holding her belly, and screamed, Henry, I'm carrying your child, how could you treat me like this? Henry slapped Wendy on the head, snarling, shut up if you want to live. Then he slowly walked towards me. By now, the ground temperature nearly hit 100 degrees Celsius. Henry wore heavy insulation while I was in a cool camisole. The room behind me was cool, and there was a stack of bottled water. With menace, Henry interrogated, Molly, where did you get all these supplies? And how did you know the heat apocalypse was coming? Before I could respond, Sunny came out with hands on her hips, brazenly, what's it to you? I'm telling you, no matter how much there is in this villa, you're getting none. Henry chuckled with anger, pulling out a bat, and began pounding the iron door. Raging, he screamed, I'll smash this place, prison or not, I'll break it down. None of you will live once I'm in. Sunny, frightened by his aggression, clutched my clothes, screaming, Mom, zap him already, Mom. How can you suggest that? I widened my eyes and shouted, he's your father, Sunny. Besides, after being husband and wife, there should be some compassion left. If you won't save him, I will. Sunny listened to what I just said, and started doubting her own ears. She couldn't believe it. I used to hate Henry so much, I wished he would just drop dead. Mom, I think you've lost it, she said. She didn't even have time to stop me, as I reached for a bottle of water to hand it to Henry. Molly, get a grip, she shouted. She watched me as I cracked open the front door. Just a little more, and Henry could force his way inside. Sunny panicked. She rushed up to grab my arm. Molly, you're gonna get me killed, she yelled. That was the moment I had been waiting for. I grabbed Sunny by the hair and slammed her against the wall. Bam! Once, twice, 3 times. In an instant, a lot of blood started gushing from Sunny's forehead. She was dazed and couldn't fight back anymore. I opened the door and shoved her outside like she was trash. Henry, who was shocked to the core by what just happened, suddenly snapped back to reality. He grabbed the door frame and shouted, Molly, I'm gonna make sure you die tonight. I raised an eyebrow, silently stepped back, and hit the power button. Suddenly, the smell of charred meat filled the air. Henry hit the ground, twitched, and stopped breathing. Sunny came to, clutching her still bleeding forehead, while I quickly shut the door. Despite the heat making her sweat all over, she crawled towards me, gasping for air. Mom, open up. Mom, it's me, Sunny. Mom, she cried. I crouched down, really taking in her pitiful near-death state. I wouldn't want you to die without knowing, so I'm gonna tell you the truth today, I said, my voice calm. Henry found us because I secretly activated location sharing on your phone and saw your memos, I added. Sunny went pale. Mom, it's not what you think, she weakly tried to explain. I chuckled softly, of course, it's not what you thought, because I've been planning to get back at you from the start. I looked straight into her eyes and smiled widely. Did you really think you were the only one who got a second chance? Sunny's disbelief turned into despair. I remember perfectly how you treated me in the last life, Sunny, I continued. She never imagined that her supposedly flawless plan would be thwarted from the start, and that this time around she'd actually live a shorter life than the last. Sunny broke down and screamed, How? How can this be? I got a second chance. I got a second chance. I turned away, grinning with triumph. Simply letting you die just wouldn't cut it. Giving you hope, only to crush it, that's more like it. With those words, I closed the second door, and Sunny's figure disappeared from sight. 3 months into the scorching apocalypse, night vanished completely. The surface temperature stayed at a blistering 110 degrees Celsius. My pantry was still well stocked. I had fresh fish and lutein eggs to eat. Even if the veggies ran out, there was no worry. The cucumbers and tomatoes in my little garden were almost ready to harvest. Months rolled by. One day, I looked at the thermometer, 95 degrees. The world's temperature was finally dropping. By the 7th month of apocalypse, night returned. Everyone felt relieved, thinking maybe we'd actually make it through. A year and a half later, Earth's temperature normalized. Rain came back, rivers and streams flowed again, and plants started to grow once more. For the first time, I stepped out of the villa. The days ahead had to be better. The end.